Well, welcome everyone to the HSC Office for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Disability Awareness Month activity and event. I'm Dr. JP Sanchez. I serve as the Executive Associate Vice President in the HSC Office of DEI. On behalf of all of us at the office and Vice President Dr. Romero Leggett, we'd like to thank you for making the time to join us. For those who are unable to join us today, this presentation will be recorded and posted on our HSC Celebrations website, similar to prior Heritage Month events. Before we begin, I just want to go over a few housekeeping items. Please place your questions or comments in the chat at the bottom of your screen, the chat box. We will try and address as many as we can at the end of the presentation. Please also take a moment to complete the pre-assessment in the chat box that's being provided by Dr. Swan. This will help us understand your interests and reflections during this month. And later on at the end of this session, we will also provide a post-assessment. With that, I'm grateful and excited that we have Ms. Kelly Cano Martinez as one of our presenters. She serves as the HSC Accommodations Specialist of the Accessibility Resources Center of the University of New Mexico. She's an Albuquerque native and alumni of the UNM Sign Language Interpreter Program. So also be sharing a little bit more of her background. As of October 2020, Kelly was hired to work at the UNM as an HSC accommodation specialist. Kelly works with HSC students with disabilities to ensure equal access to their didactic, clinical, and testing experiences on campus. She is a self-proclaimed Disney adult. I join you in that. Who enjoys watching Disney movies and spending quality time with her husband, family, and friends. I also would like to welcome Director Amanda Buttram.
You got it.
Thank you. She is Director of the Accessibility Resources Center of UNM. Amanda has worked at UNM since 2005. She is currently the director at the center, where she coordinates academic accommodations for students with disabilities. Additionally, Amanda worked as a deaf services specialist at several post-secondary institutions in California and as a sign language interpreter since 1989. She is nationally certified by the Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf as a professional sign language interpreter, and in 2006, she received her master's degree in social sciences with an emphasis in women's studies. So please help me in welcoming both of our speakers today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Let's go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and start presenting, and then I'll share my screen. 1 second. Slideshow from beginning. And then, sorry, multiple screens. Let's do this, and then switch that. There we go. Can everybody see the PowerPoint okay? Perfect. So thank you all again so much for having us. And JP, thank you for the very nice introduction as well. For our presentation, I just want to line out some of our learning objectives. We hope that you all will understand the mission of the Accessibility Resource Center at the University of New Mexico, and we hope that you understand what ARC can provide to students with disabilities on all UNM campuses. Learn about the medical model view of disability versus the social justice model. Provide the process that medical students must go through to receive accommodations in HSC programs, and understand the technical standards, understand what technical standards are and how we can create inclusive standards for admissions. Oops. Again, great. That was a nice introduction. Just here's a photo of myself. I am the HSC accommodation specialist here at UNM. I work with students that are in any other HSC programs that include School of Medicine, College of Nursing, College of Pharmacy, basically anything that's up at HSC. I am the one who helps those students with disabilities get accommodations in our classes. And then Amanda, I don't know if you want to do another quick introduction to yourself, but there's a photo of her here.
So yes, hi, I'm Amanda Buttram, and like JP said, I'm the director at Accessibility Resource Center right now. And we are thankful that you've invited us to present today. So why don't we just jump in, since you already have my background of who I am, we'll just jump in and get started.
Sounds great. Here we go.
So we always like to begin with talking about our mission at the Accessibility Resource Center. It helps everybody understand our positionality and our view of students, of working with students with disabilities. ARC recognizes that individuals with disabilities are an integral part of a diverse community, and we are committed to the provision of comprehensive resources to the university community. And our goal is to create equitable, inclusive, and practical learning environments. And basically what we're saying in that mission is we approve reasonable academic and clinical accommodations for eligible students with disabilities. And really that is our goal. When we meet with students, and we'll talk about this more later, we're looking at how we can come together on an accommodation program or plan that will ensure that students have access. We are grounded in the law, and even though we do come from a social justice perspective, and that's where we like to ground our work, we do also have to recognize that the work that we do is mandated legally through federal law, and that law is the Americans with Disabilities Act. The Americans with Disability Act is a civil rights law that protects people with disabilities as a protected class, provides civil rights protections for people with disabilities. As other civil rights laws, it prohibits discrimination against people with disabilities. And really, again, with the same goal in mind as our mission, it's to ensure that people with disabilities have equal access, equal opportunities to participate fully in programs such as the HSE programs, but all programs at UNM. In addition to the Americans with Disability Act, UNM has its own policy, which is Policy 2310. And this just gives more specific information about how Accessibility Resource Center and the university work with and support students with disabilities on campus. Again, with the same mission in mind, that we're committed to equal opportunities and putting in place reasonable accommodations to ensure that the university provides access and full participation for all students. Part of this process, which you're going to hear us say again and again and again, this is outlined in the Americans with Disabilities Law and part of our UNM Policy 2310, is that this process really is about engagement, about having a conversation. Legal terms for that is an interactive dialogue, but really all parties come together to have a conversation about what is the best and most reasonable way for us to provide access to students in the learning environment here at the university. During that interactive dialogue, we problem solve, we look at concerns, we work with students, because a lot of students don't know exactly what accommodations are available or what to ask for. In that interactive dialogue, we talk about what's going on, what's the individual's experience, and from there, we can come together and come up with an accommodation plan. And of course, all the time, we maintain academic standards. Students still need to meet all minimum standards and requirements for a program. Accessibility Resource Center and the law does not state that we have to lower or reduce standards or make any modifications that would fundamentally alter a program, but rather come together to ensure access and accessibility for all participants. So when we talk about a disability, it seems basic, but I think it's important to talk about what the definition of a disability is, because sometimes that does come up. We look to the Americans with Disability Act to really guide us on that definition, and we take it straight from the ADA. And basically it says a physical or cognitive challenge which substantially limits a major life activity. And that's a really broad definition, and that's intentional because it really incorporates a lot of different diagnoses or disabilities. Sometimes people don't even identify themselves as a person with a disability, but they are still covered by the Americans with Disability Act due to a diagnosis that substantially limits a major life function. we've included a list, but it's a very short list and one that's really related to the academic environment. And that includes walking, seeing, hearing, speaking, reading, learning, concentrating, communicating, but it can also include sleeping, eating. There's just a lot of things on that list. And so if somebody ever has a question about whether or not they qualify or are covered by the law, we just encourage them to reach out to us and we can have that conversation with them to really make that determination. Sometimes there's a lot we can do that students don't even realize. Okay, now, sorry, I got distracted. Too many things popping up. I have to close. All right, so then we like to talk about ways of how to look at a disability. Really, again, I mentioned that the lens that we are looking through the disability is through a social justice lens. That's the approach we like to take to the work here at UNM. It fits nicely with the UNM community, and it follows nicely with the UNM's 2040 plan of an inclusive campus. But historically, it's important to note that disability used to be really looked at through a medical model lens. And the medical model lens really saw disability as the individual's responsibility, that there was something wrong with that individual. They were broken in some way, needed to just get fixed. And then they would be able to better fit into what would be considered, mainstream society or mainstream areas. And really, social justice model and the disability rights movement really flipped that on its head and said, no, being a person with a disability is a normal course of human life, of the human experience. And as such, it's everybody's responsibility to create inclusive environments where everybody can participate. And so that was really what the disability rights movement was saying and what social justice supports. And so with that perspective, we really look at how we as an institution, how we as a department, how programs can create inclusive environments and accessibility for everybody. So it's not really the student's responsibility, but more the institution's responsibility to respond to that and create environments where everybody can participate and everybody feels like they belong. And we know belonging is really, really important to the student experience and for students for retention and for success.
I think we're ready. There we
I think
go.
that's it. I think I hit it all.
Yeah.
So when we talk about discrimination about people with disabilities, we call that ableism. And ableism just really looks at somebody with a disability as, like I said, broken or discriminatory action towards that individual. Not creating spaces where people can participate, where people can be part of the programming that's going on. And again, it's grounded in biases against people with disability, the idea that they need to fix themselves, there's nothing I need to do. And like other forms of discrimination, it's structurally and it's system structures and systemic barriers that continue to create barriers and inclusive environments. So on campus here, in addition to our office doing really good work on trying to create inclusion, there's also the Compliance, Equity, and Equal Opportunity, CEEO office. They actually do a lot of work towards equity and inclusion here at the university, but they also will listen to individuals who feel like have experienced discrimination and want to file a report. And so you can do that on their website. Hopefully all of us can check our internal biases and make sure that we're really trying to create environments that include everyone.
Perfect. I think I can go ahead and take it on from here. I'm just going to quickly discuss, Amanda did a really great job of discussing the different models of disability. This is just a quick definition about what each of them are. The medical model view on disability makes the view that there's a defect with the individual. It can be viewed as someone that has a deviation the normal traits and characteristics that a person may have. And they believe that if there's to have a high quality of life, they'll need to be fixed, cured, or completely eliminated. Sounds a little harsh, but that's unfortunately the view of this medical model. We really want to make sure that we focus our work on the social justice view of disability, and it's really to ensure the interaction between functional limitation, well, the interaction between functional limitations and impairments, and physical and social barriers. We want to make sure that removing the disabling environments through this social justice model. And we really want to prioritize an individual's dignity and experience. And really all of our students here at UNM have the right to full participation of all of their courses, their tests, and their clinic experiences. And part of our mission and one of the taglines that UNM has is each of us defines all of us. And we really value each member of UNM and make sure that every member of UNM really enriches our academic community and experience. And making sure that we remove these systemic barriers to participation is a campus-wide responsibility. Of course, our office is clearly, we're here to help with that, but we want to make sure that UNM as a whole is wanting to participate in that as well. I like to use this picture here of these three people looking at it, watching a baseball game, to really talk about the barriers of student participation. Without accommodations, some students will struggle to participate. So the first panel of this photo here, clearly the tallest and then the first and the second person is clearly able to view the game, but because the third person here is shorter than the others, he's not able to participate and watch the baseball game. And even though, yes, equally, they all have the same stool to stand on, not everybody here is showing that they can participate. So what can we do? We can accommodate that person and be able to give them a little bit more help, give them an accommodation so that they all can view the game like it shows here in the middle panel. But really our goal is to make sure that we can remove all structural barriers so everyone is welcome to participate fully. And that's just removing that fence there as that example. Technical standards. So we also, alongside of working with students with disabilities to get accommodations, I'm also able to help different programs at HSC review their technical standards and give some guidance on what would be more appropriate language and to make sure that we include everybody in the technical standards for admission to their programs. Technical standards, if you don't know what they are, they're a specific list of non-academic abilities and characteristics established by a program as requirements for admission, promotion, and graduation. All technical standards can be met with or without a disability. And sometimes with technical standards, there can be unintentional discriminatory language. This usually mentions the senses, so being able to speak or write in English, to be able to hear X, Y, and Z. And it may be time, depending on what program you're in, to review your technical standards. I'm not going to go through every single part of what a technical standard can have, but I'm going to just highlight a few segments of technical standards that could have this discriminatory language come up. The first one is communication. A lot of times with communication, an example that we have here says candidates must be able to record information accurately and clearly in English, accurately and clearly in written and spoken English with other professionals. Again, the written and spoken English can stop maybe students who are deaf who use American Sign Language to participate. They weren't possibly able to speak English with their other professionals. So a possible rewrite to this could be the candidate must be able to communicate effectively, efficiently, and sensitively with research subjects, faculty, staff, and colleagues. This allows anybody to be able to participate in whatever program this technical standard is from. Another one is observations. the example here is the use of senses. So the sufficient use of vision, hearing, and somatic sensory is necessary to perform procedures of inspection to review radiographs as taught in the curriculum. A possible rewrite for this could be observe experimental results or subjects accurately, acquire information from written documents, and visualize information as presented in images from paper, films, slide videos, or other forms of modern electronic media. Interpret these images and other forms of data with or without the use of assistive devices. We want to make sure that the technical standards are written in a task-oriented format rather than the use of the senses. So that's why we like to use words here like interpret graphic images or visualize information as presented, and make sure we want to include everybody that so we can do this task with or without the use of assistive devices. So sometimes the question come up will be, well, what is essential? What is the point of using all of these? Sometimes schools will try to focus on the assumptions and conclusions about what the student may or may not be able to do without going through a fully interactive process. And we want to make sure to keep the interactive process focused and on the standards and competencies, and then identify what is essential to that task that needs to be done in this program. I'm going to transition quickly over here to how do HSC students get connected to ARC. Amanda had a really great explanation of our interactive process, and I have it lined out here as well. Removing barriers to student success, we want to make sure we can do that without fundamentally altering a course degree or program, and doing that is going to require some collaboration. We don't want to have the students not be able to meet the technical standards unless we're able to help them with the getting accommodations. So the student will need to initiate by providing an accessibility resource center with documentation of a disability. This can be a long list of different things, but basically the documentation needs to list what the disability is, and it has to be signed by a licensed professional. From there, once we just make sure it has everything we need, it goes over to that student will get connected to an accommodation specialist. For those who are in HSC programs, they'll be working with me, and that student will meet with that specialist and develop an accommodation plan. Alongside of the documentation, we do the interview and we discuss the barriers to the task, possibly in the classroom, in the clinic setting, or in the testing environment. And from there, we can have that interactive dialogue to figure out what accommodations are available to the student, and to ultimately with the goal to remove those barriers so they can fully participate. Once we figure out what that plan is and what the list of accommodations are for those students, I will send out an accommodation letter to the instructors for each of their courses. These letters includes the accommodations that the student is approved. This letter will not ever disclose what the student's disability is. And alongside of sending this letter, we also can help professors and other faculty members implement these accommodations to make sure that it fits their stated academic requirements. Here's just a very short list of tons of different examples of accommodations, or excuse me, here's a short list of examples to a long list of accommodations that we can provide for students. The most common one that faculty might see would be extended time on exams. I also can help students get accommodations, testing accommodations for their OSCEs, clinical exams, and for students who are in School of Medicine, I can also help them with the process of getting accommodations on the USMLE STEP exam. For our deaf and hard of hearing students, we can also provide sign language interpreters and live captioning. We also can convert physical textbooks to electronic copies through accessible text. Some other common accommodations we provide that I don't have listed here are deadline extensions and attendance adjustments. Here I wanted to talk about the growth of students that we've had registered with our office. Move this over. So just as a 10-year comparison, within the past 10 years, we have seen a growth of students getting registered with our office. You can see between the 2019 to 2020 school year and the 2020 to 2021 school year, there was a little bit of a dip in students getting registered with us, but we also have to remember that we were going through the COVID-19 pandemic at that time. And ever since then, we've been growing in numbers from there. Amanda, do you have any other specific percentages? I'm drawing a blank on what exactly that percentage growth was, but you can see on the box to the right, the growth of students from 1,187 to 1,400 to 1,600 students.
Just, it was a 20% growth from 2022 to 2023. So not sure exactly, other than enrollment is up and our enrollment is also up.
And then for HSE students in particular, from the 21 to the 22 school year, we had a 38% increase. Part of that, I think, is because of the pandemic, but also my visibility, a larger visibility of what I do and what our office does in HSE programs. And then from the 2022 to 23 school year, I found out that we had a 20% increase. Not as large as the year before, but still a significant increase, which closely mirrors what we're experiencing on main campus as well. If any of you have any questions about what our office does or more about disability in general, you can contact us by email, you can call us, or you can visit us on main campus as well. And that is that. Thank you all so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Kelly and Amanda. Again, we'd like to use the next 10 to 20 minutes for questions, and I'll just put out one question. Can you remind, I can't remember if you mentioned this, but in that latest table where there's been an increase in students with disabilities, two questions. One, has the definition, the inclusion criteria changed at all over that 10-year period? Or two, have you expanded your scope? Well, I guess that's one and the same, right? The criteria or scope. And then the second question is, are you finding that people are being identified with disabilities primarily during their college period or in their period they're with us? Or do these people have their disabilities been determined prior to coming to us?
So those are great questions. So to answer the first one, first, technically, no, there has been no change in the definition of disability or the criteria. The amendment to the Americans with Disabilities Act was done over 10 years ago. I always forget the year. I can't quite, I think 2019 is when, no, that's not right. 2009, I think, is when the amendment went through. And so the definitions remain the same. And that amendment broadened the definition of disability. I think there's a multitude of factors. I think one factor is just coming out of the pandemic, more and more individuals are recognizing that they have anxiety or depression, and our numbers of students who identify or have provided documentation for a psychological disability, that's our largest area of growth. And so I think we had a 38% increase just in that diagnosis over the past 5 years, or even larger. And I think also with the understanding, more and more understanding about neurodiverse thinking and neurodiverse ways of learning, that individuals with diagnoses such as ADHD are recognizing that they can come to Accessibility Resource Center and that there are accommodations that we can provide to them, and that, you know, they've struggled and now we can really find a way to support students with neurodiversity. In terms of when individuals are diagnosed, that's not data that I have, but that's a great question. I would say that it's across the board. Probably most of the students that we work with have had disabilities lifelong and used accommodations in high school and are continuing to use accommodations when they come here. But there are many individuals who either didn't realize they had ADHD or they had a psychological disability until it really manifests for them in college. Disability onset can happen to anybody at any time, right? And it's can be a quick change, and it can be a quick onset. And so students or individuals can come work with us at any time. I think the other thing that we see, Kelly and I see, because I work with law school and Kelly works with HSC, is that oftentimes students had strategies in their undergraduate work that worked for them, compensation skills and different things to manage their disabilities. But then when you're in a much more high demand, high stakes educational setting, now these things are amplified. And so you need to seek supports. And so that accounts for some of the time, some students who don't start using accommodations until they're at law school or until they're in an HSC program. So it's a variety of reasons. Great questions.
Just building off of that,
Mhm.
can an individual who hasn't been diagnosed with a disability come to you if they want to explore it and get an assessment, or do they have to have formal diagnosis before they can come to you?
They do need to bring the formal diagnosis to us. We can provide a community resource list, but our understanding, we just got feedback actually this week that our resource list, none of the providers are taking new clients. So that's a struggle. And we recommend calling if you need to get an assessment for maybe a learning disability or ADHD, just to call your insurance and see who they can recommend that you get in touch with. But you can also just go to your provider and talk with them. But there are times that we do sit down and explore with students because, like I said in the presentation, sometimes individuals don't recognize that a diagnosis that they have will qualify them to get connected with our office. And oftentimes, let's say they have a diagnosis, but they don't have one for what they really think is going on. Oftentimes the accommodations will mirror each other. So it's not really necessary to get us documentation for the secondary disability. We can just work off of the first disability and hope that the accommodations will benefit both diagnosis or disabilities. Are there any other questions that we can answer or any other discussion topics anybody would like to bring up? I'm not hearing anything. JP, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah, well, I think if there's no other questions or comments, please, one, complete the post assessment, but more importantly, the post assessment link that's provided in the chat box. But more importantly, please follow up with Amanda and Kelly to remain up to date on the evolving services through the Accessibility Resources Center, and share this information with your colleagues. And as I talk about updates, Kelly and Amanda, do you offer like quarterly webinars, or are there a newsletter where people can access updates, because you're providing great resources, opportunities change?
We don't have anything formal like that, but we do have a very comprehensive web page. Sometimes it's a little hard to navigate, but if you click through, you can find the information you need, or you can just email us directly and we can guide you. Pretty much everything we've talked about today is on our website with more information about specific accommodations, how those are implemented, what they look like, documentation information. So you may find more information there. Or reach out. We're happy to talk or chat, or when we're invited, we'll do a presentation. And Kelly has just put her contact information and our website link in the chat box.
Excellent. Any final questions or thoughts? Well, I just want to say thank you again, Kelly and Amanda, for your great work at the institution, and for joining us to make Disability Awareness Month really informative. And we'll conclude. Remember, everyone, this recording is accessible on the HSC Celebrations webpage. It will in a little bit. And another round of applause for Kelly and Amanda. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much.
You all enjoy the rest of your day.